In the next scene, Aaliyah looked around attentively. Darian opened the door to his house and asked if she had forgotten something. She shook her head, trying to quickly find a way to pass that test. The curiosity about what kind of helmet she might see distracted her, preventing her from concentrating. Darian watched her carefully and calmly asked if Alaga had said anything to her. He mentioned that she seemed indecisive, unsure of what to do. Aaliyah decided to confess that she was not the helmet. Without much effort, Darian entered her house, drew his sword, and began sharpening it with focus. He did not react to her words, which led Aaliyah to wonder if Darian only responded to what Helmet himself might say to him. So, she decided to ask him a question that had been on her mind, whether she really needed to leave the forest. But Darian remained silent. Surprise overwhelmed her, as she expected a different answer. Therefore, she avoided asking him directly about the forest's location, afraid of being too clear. In her mind, she started to piece together clues. She remembered seeing a demonic beast that could speak and seemed to have a close relationship with Helmet. Although she couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, she was certain Helmet had lived in that forest for a long time. She thought that was the reason Helmet was so accustomed to facing demonic beasts. Since Helmet had mentioned his desire to leave that place, she deduced he was not there by his own choice. She wondered why the young man had not been able to leave the forest. Could it be because the forest was vast? The part that surprised her the most was that the divine swordsman was also there, which made her think that Helmet learned his swordsmanship from him. She knew Helmet's master was not an ordinary person, but she didn't expect it to be Darian. The divine swordsman stood up and approached Aaliyah. He raised his sword and asked her to try to lift it. She obeyed, and Darian told her she was still too small for that. He added that it would have been helpful for her to grow as quickly as the demonic beasts did. Then, he gave a gentle smile, and that expression seemed very pleasant to Aaliyah. Since she arrived there, one question had remained in her mind. Why did she feel so comfortable in a place inhabited by creatures larger than the trees and where Helmet lived? She realized that this feeling belonged to Helmet himself. She could tell that that place was valuable to him, even if he wanted to leave. That's why Aaliyah softly smiled and kept watching the sword. Darian explained that demonic beasts grow faster than a human baby. She was surprised that her friend had managed to survive in that root-laden forest. He also mentioned that perhaps she could cross the divine barrier and escape if her luck was enough. Upon hearing this, Aaliyah smiled and immediately tried to follow his advice. Then, she remembered that Darian had mentioned the existence of the root forest, and at that moment, something caused the sword she was holding to slip from her hands. She couldn't believe she had never thought of that option before, and the situation took her by surprise. Aaliyah soon realized that she had already considered that possibility, although she had never wanted to accept it. She knew that a human child must be born with a spark of darkness to be left in the root forest. However, she quickly turned to Darian and asked if they were really in that forest. At that moment, her memory fractured and transported her back to reality. The young girl was pulled out of that vision and saw several scenes related to Helmet. Although she couldn't fully understand what she was seeing, a deep feeling of sadness overwhelmed her. She heard a voice telling her that her transition to humanity was progressing slowly and that she needed to pass through the root forest. To protect herself, she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she found herself kneeling before an altar, flanked by two imposing gladiator statues. As she looked at that place, Helmet reached out his hand to her. Surprised, Aaliyah took it and stood up. She told him she didn't expect him to arrive before her and asked when he had arrived. Our friend replied that he had just gotten there. Nervously, she asked if he had seen anything at that moment. Helmet confirmed that he had, and, looking at an hourglass in his hand, explained that they had more urgent matters to attend to. The image of a potential unfinished test still surprised her, especially because Helmet maintained an impassive attitude even after both of them had seen their pasts. Together, they ascended the altar stairs. Helmet commented that, in that space, there were only those two huge statues. Upon reaching the top, they observed the altar itself. Aaliyah explained that an altar is a place where offerings are made in rituals, although Helmut didn't fully grasp that idea. She sensed that something was wrong in that dungeon, which was actually supposed to be Lampion's tomb. She thought that in the last room, they would find records or a coffin. Cautiously, she touched the altar, and it emitted a luminous glow. The girl was amazed at this reaction, as something emerged from the altar and took the form of a man. He asked if she was the mage who had passed his test. Through his voice, he expressed that the world still managed to surprise him, despite his long life. He didn't expect that only 2 people would manage to clear his dungeon, much less that one of them would be a young mage. Aaliyah asked if he was Lion, to which he confirmed that he was. He informed her that he had arrived to guide her personally through the final test. Helmut seemed to feel ignored, and Lampion, stroking his beard, apologized to him for making him feel that way. He clarified that only an exceptional magician could pass the final test. Suddenly, with a flick of his fingers, he used his magic to draw Aaliyah closer to the altar and told Helmut that he no longer needed to follow them. Lantern and Aaliyah were transported to another place through a portal. Before they could enter, the entire room trembled, creating a palpable tension. The young man soon placed his hand on his sword, alert to the changes around him. Suddenly, the gladiator statues decorating the space seemed to come to life, emerging with an unsettling movement. Without hesitation, the young man drew his sword and cast a spell over it, feeling that something in that place was not right. Lantern took Aaliyah to a different dimension, a vast world filled with shelves and an abundance of books. The girl was amazed by the magnitude of the place, which resembled an endless library. The magician explained that here he stored the fruits of all his years of research. Every book, every parchment, contained unique knowledge. The presence of the magician seemed more physical and tangible, as if his body was alive in this eternity of wisdom. He revealed that only those magicians he authorizes can access the sanctuary, and that she should feel proud to be there. Aaliyah, from the ground, asked if it was truly necessary for Lantern to bring her there, as if he had kidnapped her. She added that her companion, a swordsman, was not interested in magic and perhaps did not care much about this collection of knowledge. Lantern found that attitude strange, surprised that in the face of such a treasure, her first reaction was to comment on her relationship with him. He asked if she trusted her protector so much, to which Aaliyah responded with surprise. The magician, stroking his beard, commented that perhaps she had not passed the test by chance. The girl did not expect that answer and asked what he was trying to assess with this final challenge. Lantern explained that the test revealed the most protected secret of a person's heart, for within it lies their true strength. He added that a group is doomed to fail as soon as it loses mutual trust, and that a magician must be able to unite everyone in that adversity. Only he who manages to maintain that unity, even after discovering each other's weaknesses, is worthy of inheriting all he possesses. To enter that sanctuary, one must touch an altar, remaining faithful and trusting the other, despite difficult revelations. Lantern, smiling, admitted that perhaps the outcome of that test was not exactly what he had planned. Aaliyah asked if that meant she and her companion should not lose trust in each other. He confirmed they were right and that trust remains fundamental on that path. The girl smiled with some tension, understanding the significance of it. The wizard added that, deep down, his thoughts were not entirely wrong. Finally, he expressed that he had found a capable and talented wizard, someone who could lead with wisdom. Aaliyah thanked him for his evaluation and looked up, asking if there was any reward or if he would give her something in return. She suggested that he could grant her ownership of the labyrinth, since it would take more than a month to read all the books it contained. But Lampion replied that he was too impatient and that there was still a long way ahead. He acknowledged that, in truth, their destinies were intertwined, and that in the future, their efforts and knowledge would continue to merge into a single body to keep investigating and discovering together forever. Aaliyah did not understand what he meant by a single body. She turned towards him and asked what he was trying to say with that phrase. Lampion remained silent, without responding. Then, She quickly concentrated her mana in her hand, preparing a spell. Before she could activate it, Lan turned around and raised his hand. A magic circle appeared beneath her, releasing several thinner chains that immobilized her. Aaliyah sensed that she could not activate her magic. The great wizard revealed that he had always felt remorse. He explained that the path of learning has no end, but a human's life is too short to reach it. Looking at his hand, he said that even slowing down aging with magic, a human would barely live for 150 years. He lamented that he might die of old age before completing the research he carried. However, he added that the story would be different if he managed to acquire a young body. Aaliyah was stunned to discover that Lan planned to steal her body to extend his existence. She asked if he practiced black magic. Lampion denied that accusation, assuring her that he did not practice such arts. He explained that someone of his level would not resort to such low methods. What he was doing was a soul transfer technique he had created himself. He raised his hand and assured her that she would not feel much pain if she agreed to his plan. He promised that, by doing so, they could approach the true principles of magic. He asked her to consider the proposal in the name of honor. Just at that moment, he placed his hand on Aaliyah's face. However, at the very same moment, he was hit with a strong force that pushed him backward. Lampion was surprised by this unexpected resistance, unable to understand how she had managed to repel his magic. The young woman smiled at him and confessed that she actually suspected he had some hidden intention. She said it was sad that things hadn't turned out as he had hoped. Intrigued, Lampion asked how she had managed to stop his spell. Aaliyah replied that she had no idea. She explained that perhaps his spell was incomplete. The frustration appeared on the wizard's face as he raised his hand and activated his spell again. However, the magic was repelled once more, leaving him perplexed. He was completely sure he had already reached the final version of the spell and couldn't understand what was going wrong. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He asked whether she was not a man. Aaliyah reminded him that he had scrutinized her memories at will and displayed them freely. She questioned whether, being the guardian of the sanctuary, he could not confirm such a thing. She reproached him for his inadequate preparation. Smiling, she explained that for a soul transfer to succeed, the recipient's body must be biologically compatible. She pointed out that he couldn't simply ignore chromosomes and expect the soul to settle in without issues. Reminding him that he needed to start from scratch, she advised him to investigate from the beginning. Angrily, Lan grabbed his head and called him an insolent brat. He asked if he thought he couldn't start over with another experiment. He affirmed that he had more than enough time to make the necessary adjustments in that space. Aaliyah smiled at him and told him that he actually didn't have that much time left. Lampion became irritated upon hearing those words and asked her to stop talking nonsense. Right at that moment, he sensed something strange. Outside of the dimension, we see how a helmet is destroying a gladiator into pieces. Without wasting time, he charged at another enemy and easily dismembered him. The scene left Lampion astonished, unable to believe that his comrade had destroyed a golem commanded by a magic core. He knew well that no conventional weapon could eliminate such a creature. Then, he remembered that moment when he was dragging Aaliyah toward the portal. He understood that she had added a spell to Helmet's sword when he extended his hand. After taking out the golems, Helmet quickly headed toward the portal, shattered it, and crossed into Lanthion's dimension. Aaliyah quickly called to him, asking him to end Lampion. Before the wizard could launch an attack, Helmet cut off his head. Lampion couldn't accept that reality. His mind refused to believe that all his efforts to attain immortality had been in vain. At that moment, Helmet fell to the ground, his body dissipated, and his spell deactivated. He put away his sword and asked Aaliyah how she was doing. She replied that she was fine, thanks to him. She begged him to come quickly, warning that the dungeon would collapse soon without its master. At that moment, the place began to tremble intensely.